Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Mess Tarek, and we're continuing the series Sega Racing Renaissance, where I review every single Sega arcade 3D racing game in a retrospective fashion. And today we're taking a look at Sega Rally Revo. And I know what you're thinking, this is not an arcade game, and that is true, but when I talked about Sega Rally 3, so many people commented about Sega Rally Revo, asking if I was going to do an episode on that, and I had it on my list of bonus episodes, so here we are. Before I get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, that notification bell definitely helps us out. If you feel so inclined to want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But let's get right into the racing and talk about what Sega Rally Revo really is, and from now on I'm just going to call it Revo. This is basically a home console exclusive that was developed in parallel with Sega Rally 3 for arcades, but it does share some of the courses from Sega Rally 3, so it's like a pseudo port that's also its own game. Now I am playing this via emulation on PlayStation 3 to get it upscaled better than my PlayStation 3 can do, but I'm not playing it on the Windows version for one very specific reason. I want to talk about the fact that it's been reduced down to 30 frames a second and talk about what the difference is between an arcade release and a home console release were back in the day. But right off the top, it's Sega Rally, so we got to talk about the handling and the mechanics. They're obviously very, very similar to Sega Rally 3 because they were developed at the same time, and this game does feel to me totally different than Sega Rally and Sega Rally 2 on both the Model 2 and Model 3 arcade boards. The handling, physics engine, everything like that has changed between those first two games and this one, and I'm not saying it's for the better or the worse, it is just different. These cars have a lot more weight behind them, the back end likes to swing out way more, and if you make simple mistakes like I just did there intentionally to show you what happens, or you can not believe that, comment down below and tell me if you think I'm telling the truth, you will get punished in this game. The AI is brutal, they are racing a clean line, and you need to make sure you don't make mistakes. As I roll back into the third lap and I am in third place, not making those same mistakes there will help me keep that place. But this is a much harder game to master than the first two Sega Rally games, and it is a much harder game to learn. And I think that's actually a good thing because it's going to give you a lot more longevity than the first two games, which are pretty quick to pick up and play, but they're still difficult to get really good at. But as we move into a completely different level here, I love all these little level intros, and I will say all of the course designs are quite good. You're going to go from tarmac to sand to snow to mud to water and everything in between, and when you hit that, you're 100% going to feel your car's handling change. All of the real-time deformation of the terrain can affect how your car runs as well. When you're in snow and you're in the deep snow, you're going to see that snow squish down, but you're also going to feel the handling of your vehicle change in real time. Now it is slightly a bummer on the console versions, this runs at 30 frames a second, but in this generation that's a lot of what you saw different between PC and console and arcade and console. Sega would not want to release a 30 frame per second arcade racing game in arcades, but they were totally fine to do that on home consoles, and that's why the 360 and PlayStation 3 versions of Sega Rally Revo are going to be locked to 30 frames. Don't worry about that compiling shaders. My CPU has more than enough brute force to be able to do that at the same time as running the game at that locked 30. But it's a hard game. You'll see here I make a mistake on that hairpin, and if I roll back to the third lap, I make a different mistake. You have to learn every single course in Revo to get better at it. You need to know where every single turn is, you need to know every single vehicle, or you need to pick one car and make it work for you. Because I would say even more so than Sega Rally 3 in the arcades, this is the hardest version of Sega Rally I've ever played. I am just not amazing at it if you can't tell from the footage. I'm perfectly decent on a good day and slightly worse than that on a bad day. But I will say it is a ton of fun, and I was surprised how many people were interested in an episode like this. I thought talking about Sega Rally 3 would have been enough, but this was probably the most requested bonus episode, so I do hope you guys watch and enjoy it, and the views are good. But graphically, it looks incredible as well. Obviously, you're losing half the frame rate from the arcade version, but it is quite a pretty game. Now, if there's one thing I particularly don't like about Revo, though, is the soundtrack. Go ahead and listen, I'll come back and tell you why it's just a little bit of a letdown.
Jump. Easy left.
There's nothing wrong with the soundtrack, but there's nothing exciting about it either. And in this entire series, I've been talking about how great the music is in all of Sega's arcade racing games, and Sega Rally just doesn't do it for me. But that mud deformation there, the mud on the back of the vehicle, and how your car's handling changes in that wet terrain, 100% does do it for me. They are doing a whole lot of physics all at once and a whole lot of math that make it feel like you really are driving over mud, and that is 100% something that I absolutely do love about this game. And the sound effects of the engine revving when you start losing traction, the tires slipping around, everything like that does sound very good. So the sound effects are great. The music is just a little bit phoned in. But moving on to another course here, there is a lot more to see in Revo than there is in Sega Rally 3 because there's 6 different environments and each one has 3 different courses, bringing the total up to 18, and that's going to be more than you get in an arcade game. And of course, because this is a home console port, you're also going to get a championship mode where you earn points and unlock different features as the game goes on. So longevity wise, it's going to give you a ton more to do than something like Rally 3 does. And I will say all of the courses are really well designed. They might not be as good as something like Sega Rally 2, but they're like 95% of the way there. But I love all of the changing terrain, going from the dirt to the tarmac. You have to be on top of how your car's handling works, and you need to be changing it all the time in your head. Once you change substrates, you have to change how you're playing the game. But this is one of the courses that's going to show up in Sega Rally 3 as well. I will leave a link to that video down below if you want to check it out. So you are going to see a slight overlap between the arcade version and Revo. So this is basically still just a port of 3 with a lot more courses and a lot more features. And it is kind of confusing. You really have to dig deep and read lists of differences to 100% understand what Sega Rally Revo does differently than 3. But it does a lot differently, and it is worth checking out. And like I said, I specifically chose the PlayStation 3 version to talk about the 30 frame difference. So if you didn't watch the beginning of the video, leave me that comment down below, tell me the Windows version is faster. Trust me, I do know that. But I will say that some of the soundtrack here can be a little bit better than other spots. So go ahead and listen for 25-30 seconds here because this song's slightly better, and I'll come back and tell you more about what Revo does. But enjoy.
Long, medium left, major. Long, easy right. Medium left.
The soundtrack's not great and the soundtrack's not terrible. It's basically riding the middle there with like a solid C effort. But I do like all of the different courses you get in the different environments. Now I will say I'm never quite sure how I'm going to answer the question, but this week I would say my favorite game in the Sega Rally series is Sega Rally 2 on the Model 3. Ask me next week and that could easily change to the Model 2 original. But what I will say is that while Sega Rally 3 and Sega Rally Revo are extremely fun, competent, great games from Sega, they are still third place, which is funny because it is Sega Rally 3. I love them, they're fun, they just don't hit that same super fun itch like the original 2 games do, and I really hope one day we see a Sega Rally 4 come out from Sega, even if it is just an arcade exclusive. I want to return to the glory days of the original 2 games, and I just want a modern sequel to it. And I will say that this game doesn't do anything wrong. It is a ton of fun to play, it's a ton of fun to learn, the courses are great, the soundtrack's meh, the physics definitely take a second to get used to. It just doesn't have the same sheer sense of joy and sensation of speed that the original 2 games do. And I would say the same thing about Daytona 3 as well. It's still a really fun game, it just doesn't live up to the heights of those games from the 90s. And I will say that at least for me personally, the in-cockpit view is usually what I use when I'm playing racing games, but for some reason with Sega Rally 3 and Revo, I am absolute garbage in the cockpit. Now if I'm playing Initial D, I 100% need that cockpit view, but for Revo here, it just does not do it for me. but it does give you a better sensation of speed, especially when you are dealing with that 30 frame per second cap, so I will in just a moment move into that. But I love all the lighting, I love all the shadowing effects, and I really love all of the hydroplaning when you go through water. They thought about every single surface in this game, how it reacts, and really did articulate it super well as far as the handling of your car is concerned. So I will say whoever was behind the physics and the math coding on this game did an absolutely bang up job to get as close of an approximation as you can get playing a digital game to what it is like to hydroplane in real life. And trust me, if you've never done it, it is not a fun time. But you'll see here in first person view, it does feel a little bit faster. But Sega Rally Revo is one of those games, I've always played it, I've always enjoyed it, but it's never going to pop up on one of my favorite Sega arcade racing games of all time lists. That's going to be dominated by stuff like Scud Race, Outrun 2, all of the Sega Rally games, and all of the Daytona games. But it is still an absolute blast to play, and I know this video might make you leave thinking I don't like the game, but I actually really do enjoy it. It's just not as good as the first two. Sure, that I'll have another episode next week and videos throughout the week, but we're done. Bye-bye.